Thank you for joining me, Chris. Today we're going to be talking about a little thing you've been working on called phoenix.new. Can you tell us a little bit about it? What is it?
So out of the gate, phoenix.new is a Phoenix app builder powered by an AI. But it can do a lot more than that. It has a built-in web server, so you have public or private URLs. So anything you build in the app by yourself or along with AI is going to be reachable through a URL for you. So there's a lot of neat things in there as far as just like a traditional IDE environment, but also being able to share URLs, see your app in real time.
That's amazing. So it's basically like a vibe coding. I hate the term vibe coding. I think we all do.
Yep.
But it sounds like vibe coding for Phoenix specific apps. I know that some of our teammates have used it for other things, so it's not exclusive to that. But that's really hence the name.
That's
right?
what it is designed for currently. The funny thing is I've used it to build parts. I've used phoenix.new to build parts of phoenix.new that were in not in Elixir, so like in JavaScript. So the web browser. I mentioned headless Chrome. So the web browser that ships with the IDE is something I use phoenix.new to write. So it worked on its own web browser, writing Node.js, which large language models are great at. But currently the system prompt is tuned just for Elixir and Phoenix. But if you poke around on the IDE, you'll see that pretty much every language is there and installed at their latest versions.
These days, you can use Cursor, VS Code with Copilot for doing this type of vibe coding already. Why would somebody want to use phoenix.new in the first place?
That's a great question. Yeah, so I feel like kind of like a CEO of a public company. I'm going to make forward-looking statements, which may or may not reflect reality in the future. Part of this is as large language models get better, I think people will be able to trust them more. So some of the points I'm about to make may become less of an issue in the future. But out of the gate, I think Cursor has YOLO mode, they call it, because you're executing code written by a black box on your computer, and that can freak some people out. So one of the advantages of running this in the cloud, so to speak, all these words are just terrible, but it's essentially a full IDE and agent runtime in the cloud. And what that gives you is it can just go full ham to do whatever it wants. So we like to say it allows free exploration. So this headless Chrome is a good example, right? If you wanted to poke around on your local laptop, you could brew install whatever is required to do that. Or you could just on your phoenix.new machine say, use headless Chrome to fetch web pages, and it's going to do apt install whatever it thinks it needs to do, and you don't have to be freaked out about, what is this installing? Because this is like a semi-ephemeral machine that if things get messed up, you just bounce it and you have your code and you can carry on. So there's the part of it of giving an LLM full access to a computer and the internet, but within this strict jailed confine. So Fly machines are network segmented from each other. So you have a machine that's only your machine that no one else can access that the LLM runs inside. So it's not going to reach into prod for you. It can reach out to the internet, but it's not going to just start reaching out into your user files or other things on the network. So that's a big benefit. But I think the larger point, my bigger forward-looking bet, and I say this as an open source contributor, what I like to consider pretty hardcore computer nerd programmer, is I do see development becoming more and more remote because as these agents get better, I think it's going to be silly that something couldn't just be working while your laptop's shut. So I think it starts to make more sense the more and more AI code that's generated, the more and more it makes sense to have that AI working on your app, not running on your local laptop. As much as that pains, I think, other people to hear and maybe acknowledge. And we're kind of already seeing that today. I can use phoenix.new now, and it is imperfect. It doesn't always make a working app, but it does remarkably well. I can use that today, close the browser, and that's just a Fly machine running. I can revisit it back on my phone or back on my desktop later, but that thing's going to keep building the app with or without me there. And I think that's kind of the future that everyone's going to move towards, even though it seems I think there's been a lot of these remote development environment attempts throughout the past, and developers have always been well, why would I do that? And I was the same, but I think that AI does flip it a little bit because now there's value there. And like I said, this is a forward-looking statement. I could be very wrong, but it's large language models, however imperfect they are today, they can already do useful work today with you not there.
I think that's a really good point. I think there's a lot of different threads here that I want to pull on, but I want to start with security. I don't know that everyone is thinking about the implications of handing over the keys to the castle. The less knowledgeable you are about a particular framework or a technology, there is a risk involved in having an AI agent on your local machine, acting on your local machine on your behalf without you knowing what it's going to do. I think that the idea of running this code on a virtual machine somewhere else that's guaranteed to be safer, right? Fly machines are extremely safe, right? They're not just containers, although we do run, it's like a container within a VM. And this is where it's going to sound a little like an ad here. But what is really cool about fly machines is that they can run as close to you as you want, right? And that's no different from phoenix.new, right? If you spin something up, you're running it close to you. Is that much right?
We're currently, it's globally distributed currently. Right now we're in Sydney in Central Europe and East Coast US. So pretty well covered. Probably more in the future, but yeah. So where your physical IDE machine, as we call it, gets provisioned is going to be close to you, which obviously has a benefit, but...
So let's talk about what phoenix.new is actually doing. So you've got your chat, and I'll insert like screenshots and stuff like that. I'll intersperse this in the video, but you've got your chat, you've got your IDE, and that feels very, very familiar to people. What's actually happening? Oh, and then there's the preview, right? Once it actually gets to a place where it can launch the server that it's building, you get a little preview that you can minimize or make full view and stuff like that. When I'm looking at that, what are we looking at? How does that work?
It's funny. I mean, it's essentially, an iframe, but since we give you this reachable URL, so there's a phoenix.run URL, so it's a segmented host, but that's ultimately reaching the same instance, the same fly machine that's running your the agent runtime. So the thing that's running your IDE, executing code, serving the Phoenix server is reachable at this Phoenix run URL. And then we port forward on that. So you could start basically just like your local development, anything that bound to a port on your laptop, what if you just automatically had an ngrok URL for it? That's essentially what we give you. Any port is accessible if you choose to make it public by anyone. If not, that Phoenix run URL is going to be authenticated with the current users. One thing that's interesting about putting this all in the cloud is we can do interesting things with the agent has its own headless web Chrome browser. And the cool thing about this is if you think about how a lot of folks would think about implementing this, usually you don't think about giving the large language model root access to the system. Yeah. So the moment you start with, I think very few people start with a thesis of let's just have root and give it everything, right? Most people start with the oh my God, it can't reach out. We have to confine it. The moment you say well, if we can start with the premise that, fly machines by default have this segmented private network, and we just let the thing have root because it's segmented, then you can say, well, instead of trying to stand up some headless web service that each of these machines has to reach out to and hit, and then we have to segment browser sessions, what if you just ran the headless Chrome on each of these instances on the machines? So that's what we do. So it's we were able to kind of sidestep the do we have to stand up this browser preview service and try to scale that independently? It's no, everything, we can just run whatever we want locally. And the cool thing with that Cursor and all these don't really do is we can then have the agent hit your app with headless Chrome and view it, and then that's how it does a lot of its iteration. It can see the server logs, but it also physically visits the website with a Chrome browser, and it gets your JavaScript errors, it gets the page information, and so that's always if it introduces a JavaScript build issue or there's a JavaScript error, it can actually see that as the user would, and then react to that. It's since we run your web app, we can actually inject scripts into that web app that you're viewing. So as far as being able to add features, you click some selector and you can say change this here. We can do all of that because we have the whole app running. We control it. We have the reverse proxy. We can inject things in there, and then the agent can actually run code within your running web page. Whereas if one of these IDEs that run on your desktop wanted to do this, they would probably need to. They could accomplish it, let's say, with maybe a Chrome plugin or something. So all this is doable, but we're the only ones at the moment that I think that are running this full stack app. Okay, we have your app running. Now we can reach into the browser and run some code in the browser and have it do something in your app. And you'll see that when you visit Phoenix.new. But what it does is in its own Chrome instance, it can start using the app. So like you'll see it, it will like go try the app out. So it builds the app for you.
That sounds magical.
Yeah, well, like it goes to the app and it's like, so the app, like it gives you a mock-up to start with, and it's like, this is what the app's going to look like. And then it builds the app for real. And it's instructed to make anything real time that makes sense, which is really easy to do in Phoenix. So at the end, it is going to have some working dynamic app that should look like the mock-up that it made. And then it will go try it out. So then if the server logs look good and it was able to visit the web page, it will say like, now let's try this out. And it will actually write some JavaScript to evaluate in its own Chrome tab to like check a to-do or post a tweet of your whatever app you asked it to make. And then it will get the results of what that page did. And then it can, recursively iterate on that.
That is really freaky. And I've realized I haven't seen as many people talk about how LLMs could, I don't know about replace, but supplement testing in a way. Because, what you're describing are what would normally have been, roles that would normally have been filled by either people clicking around or testing libraries. The one problem with tests that you write for, especially testing UIs, is that you are only safe on the things that you've tested, and there's all the things that like you don't even think to test for. And everyone who's worked in design, like there's memes out there of all the ways that you've like designed a product and then like how users decide to interact with it. And so you could just be kind of dumb. Be kind of dumb and just click on things that don't really make sense and then see what breaks. I mean, I don't think that necessarily eliminates the need for tests or anything, because it's nice to have some consistency. But
it does the rote things that you would not bother to do yourself or put off.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's one of the things that you could do today with it. Like, it interacts with the app, and then it's like, okay, we accomplished the goal, whatever we wanted to start with, right? You have this to-do app or Twitter timeline. It's good at like, most cruddy real-time things. You can either like continue with features, or like you could ask it today, I'm going to go try this. Like, now that you tested it out, go write a Node.js playwright test for everything you just did by hand. And like, it's already written an eval JavaScript. And I guarantee, I'm going to make forward-looking statements. I think it would just nail it out of the box. And the cool thing with like this whole like agentic flow, and like spoiler alert, like agentic flow just means like you're just like recursively calling a chat completion endpoint.
It's not special. Yeah.
And all these words, there's these buzzwords. Like all you're doing is, but the cool thing with this is it would take what it did in the browser, all that JavaScript it wrote, like the 10 lines of code to like find the button in the form that it knows it wrote that's there and click it. It would convert that to playwright. It would probably nail it the first time, but if it didn't, it would run the playwright tests. And it would see that, it failed to match a selector or whatever, and it would just iterate on itself until the test pass. And like that's the future we're at, where you're just like, do these things I would prefer not to do. And those things are going to take longer and longer, the more like effective and the more we trust these things in the future. So this is where I get back to my original thesis of like the step of, even if I'm, let's say, working 90% of the app, I'm just heads down, like the step where I'm like, okay, now go write playwright tests, right? Which headless browser tests are always slow. They take a long time to run just in general, right? Because like you have all these sleeps, you have to wait for element to be visible, whatever. They're brittle. Like you just let the agent go do that thing, right? And that's going to take however long it's going to take. And that's the kind of thing where I see where like running this remotely makes sense. And granted, like CIs have been doing this forever, but I think like having this iteration that then I just pop back into, or I can just continue working, and then suddenly it's like push notification.
Yep.
I have IDE tests for you. And you're like, oh, great. Coming into this, I was like the copy paster AI user. It was one of those things that like, AI is a forced enabler. I can go ask OpenAI for something and copy paste it back into my app. And then it has an error. And I copy paste the error back. And then it's like, change this. So the revelation for me too Cursor does this, Windsurf, all these tools do, is like copy paste workflows are dead.
Okay, I have a question I want to land on that's a little more philosophical. I don't know what the title of this video is going to be, but it's probably going to have the word vibe coding in it, which is gonna piss some people off. And listen, I just want to iterate that like no one at fly.io likes the word vibe coding. No one should like it's a terrible term, but it's also kind of the future, you know, like this is where things are going. So I want to just hold a little space to hear your philosophy on vibe coding. I want to give you an opportunity to just be like, don't worry, we're not just like fully drinking the punch. Like we have thought this through. There is nuance to this.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of nuance to this. I have a hot take here. Yeah, I mean, I think vibe coding, yeah, it's like, I mean, AI in general is like a nasty word in a lot of circles, but
yeah.
But one of the things I see in my own code is much like when I go to like type something into Google and then I have this thought like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing with my life? Why am I asking Google to then have to sift through the results to get the answer? So I have those thoughts with, you know, Google, right? But like I'm having those thoughts with code now, which isn't like a great feeling, right? Like you're like, you know, def module and you're like, ugh, like what am I doing, right? It's the same instinct, and it's like you're like, I don't know how I feel about that, but that's happening with code for me personally. You know, I've written a lot of code in my life, so it's like that's weird. Less than a year from now, let's say next year, I do think we're going to view the current programming age as like we were all dinosaurs. Like people are going to be like, you used to have to like peck out all the keys by hand. It's going to be like punch cards. So we're leaving the punch card era. I'm serious. Like we're leaving the punch card era. It's going to seem insane that we punch the keys out by hand. So that's where vibe coding comes in on like most of the code we start with as a starting point is going to be vibe coded. Now, how far you go from that starting to end is going to be up to you, right? Like whether you're going from scratch to like full app, let's ship it. We're not there to like, let's ship it part, but we can get like as a starting point to what you're working on, you can get 75% of the way there and take that and run with it. And then what we term as vibe coding is going to be what we're all doing. And then it's like the whole like trust but verify is what we all do today. And that's going to remain obviously critical. But I think that's going to be all of programming because we're going to be too dumb and too slow humans without it, for better or worse. But I think for beginners though, this is where like a lot of people think vibe coding is terrible. I actually think it's like this incredible tool and force multiplier. Cause like I was a PHP coder in like the early 2000s, right? And like that vibe code was just like whatever I could find on like the PHP forums, copy paste into my app, right?
I wouldn't call it vibe coding. I would
click and drag. No, I mean, I'm saying we were all, as beginners, we were all vibe coders. It was just, it was just a lot less, there was very little verification. I couldn't even ask the computer to verify it for me. And then Stack Overflow came, a lot of copy pasta from Stack Overflow. That was vibe coding essentially, right? It's just much slower, right? There was a barrier to actually getting something to production, but not really. I mean, once we had like Create React app and these project kits, like it was very easy to deploy things. So I think the vibe coding aspect, there's a lot of fear there. And I do think there's going to be a lot of like bad code that's shipped, but that's always been the case.
Yes, I think you have your head on straight because I definitely know that, I mean, it's already happening. People are like spinning up these apps and there was some like Twitter thread that was all about like, haha, I made this app and I didn't even have to look at the code. And then he ships it. He's like, oh no, I'm getting some errors. Somebody help. I don't know what to do. And then he's like, I had to shut down the business. It didn't work. Yep. And it's because I listened to a podcast recently that mentioned like there is going to, you know, yes, we can do things faster with this stuff, much, much faster. And also that doesn't eliminate the need for, okay, I think he used the word taste. This was more in relation to like marketing and copywriting and art and stuff like that, but it's the exact same thing with code. I don't know if taste is the word, experience, right? Knowledge, right? You still need to know what good code looks like.
The problem is though, like the code that these things write is pretty good. Like as far as
it's
like,
not that bad. That's the thing.
Yeah, the tricky thing is like it's really good, but you're like, but that makes it harder, right? Like the copy pasta. See, that's the humans were in the mix on the copy pasta Stack Overflow stuff. So like they took that block of code and then you could kind of tell like, yeah, like you know the 20 nested ifs, like this is a mess. But now it's like super good, but maybe there's a security hole. So I think we do have to reconcile that, but it is remarkably good. Like the queries that it comes up with for me for like using like Elixir and Ecto, which is like, again, Elixir is like niche, right? But like the things it's able to do is like, it will do like joins in a query that like maybe that's not fetching the right data, but the amount of time it would have taken me to like try to like even get this like the stat out probably would be longer, and I would have made the same mistakes.
We're going to get to a point where you're like, I think I want to build an exercise app, and the LLM is just going to be like, girl, I got you. Sit back, have a drink.
Yeah. No worries.
Thank you so much for chatting with, I was going to say us, the royal us, whatever. Go check out phoenix.new. This has been Annie Sexton and Chris McCord on the Fly.io whatever video series. So thanks. We'll chat later. Bye, guys.
All right. Bye.